Hey folks, Jamin here. This video is for those who were unable to make the live events, but are still super interested in working out how to be unhindered and show up to life at their best where it matters most. So look, the real sweet spot for what I do is working with entrepreneurs who are 35 to 40 year old and helping them overcome the fear of not being good enough, helping them stop the self-sabotage and eradicate insecurity so that they can, in fact, be unhindered, take this handbrake off and show up at their best where it matters most. Now, I'll explain to you why 35 to 40 is super important, and I'll explain to you why entrepreneur is a key word. Now, if you're not in those categories, I'm sure you'll still find great value in the framework for overcoming insecurity. And as I say to people all the time, look, you can make change at any point in your life. I think that there are just conditions that make this work easier and factors that are conducive to personal development change work. So it's useful for me to speak that message loudly and clearly to those people who are right in the pocket, and then the overflow of that is people who are outside the pocket still benefit from that. So the idea of being unhindered is such a beautiful term in my mind. Like, it just captures this sense of freedom, this sense of no internal resistance, this sense of rapport with self, this self-permission to go and step forward into life without any reservation, without any sense of holding back, without any imposter syndrome, just to show up as an adult in the adult world. I love that, and I think it's entirely possible. I've seen that in my own life as I've overcome internal limitations through doubt, fear, and insecurity, to be able to show up in my space, free to be me, which is a beautiful place to be. So I love sharing this content with people, and I think all you need is the right framework and someone skillful enough to hold you in the space until it works. So firstly, let me address why before 40, and particularly 35 to 40 as the real pocket. You know, there are a number of cultural, emotional, individual factors that I think make 35 to 40 the ideal window. You know, firstly, I think young people know too much, and so they should. You know, and by know too much, think they know too much. You know, I'm 39 now, but I remember myself as a young 20-year-old, even up to my 30s. I think I was just so headstrong and, you know, clear about doing it differently than the people who'd gone before me and doing it better than them. So I didn't really want wisdom from people who are older than me. And I think that's common, and I think it's probably important and very natural for a young person to want to work it out their own way. And, you know, I think that's why mistakes are so important. You have to work it out yourself. Someone can tell you all the right way, but until you've experienced it yourself, it doesn't really matter to you. So, you know, I get to work with school students often, and it's an interesting experience talking about this stuff with them because sure, they need it, sure, it would benefit them, but are they ready for it? Not often. So sometimes there's a young person who's ready for this, and that's an exciting deal, but often you're not ready. And I think one of the key reasons you're not ready is you have to be willing to be wrong about some stuff. Mark Manson says that for all change to happen, it is preceded by being wrong. I think young people are not willing to be wrong, whereas you kind of get to 35 and you realize you're approaching 40 and you think, oh my goodness, maybe I'm wrong about some stuff, because you kind of awake from just having this clear focus and you know where you're going and what you're doing, and then you realize a bunch of stuff isn't working the way you thought it was going to work. And for whatever reason, you know, I think we still have this subconscious measuring stick around 40 that it represents, you know, adulthood. It represents having stuff sorted out. It represents kind of maybe the pinnacle of life. Maybe the other side of 40 is beginning the downhill slope. Right or wrong, I think often that's the subconscious commitment we've made to that number. So you kind of feel yourself approaching 40 and you're like, my goodness, my plan is not getting me to where I wanted to be. Maybe I'm wrong about some stuff. And that's actually a beautiful time of life, because being wrong means you are opened up to other ideas. Whereas if you were right, well, then why would you consider something else? So being wrong is very important to change. I think the pain levels are right. 35 to 40, young people don't have enough pain. Perhaps older people have too much pain. 35 to 40-year-olds have got some freaking pain, but it's mixed in with hope. And it's like, yes, there's some stuff that's painful and not where I want to be, and I'm aware of that pain. And if I don't work out how to make change now, it may get to a point where it's too late, but it's not too late yet. There's still time. Even though the time is ending and I can see an end point to that time, there is still a chance. And this may be my last chance. So that's a really motivating factor to think about, the fact that this could be the only or the last opportunity. We all know people who are later in years who we think, I reckon they've missed their window of change. I think even if they wanted to change now, it's probably too late and too hard. This dysfunction has become pathological. It's embedded in their cells now. It's who they are. I think also culturally we're allowed to make a few key changes around 40. Often people have been working for 20 years, 15 years in a job and ready to make a pivot, make a career change, even launch out onto their own. 40, you're allowed to have a midlife crisis, make a few key changes. So there's a bunch of reasons why 35 to 40 is really, really useful. Often you've got some maturity about you, some emotional intelligence, you've learnt a bit, you've got some runs on the board. Maybe even you've got more time and money. Kids are a little older, not quite as dependent. You've worked a job for a while, so there's some stability financially. So you're not in survival mode in those two areas. So you've got more mental space to think about growth and development. And then going beyond 40, obviously, again, you can make change at any point in your life, and it's always beautiful seeing people beyond 40 address issues and make lasting change. But the challenge is, because all this stuff is built on story and story becomes truth, the longer you live in a story, the harder it is to break out of that story. So I think there is some urgency around dealing with this stuff, and that's why my message is to speak loudly and clearly to the people who are in that window to say, hey, you're ready for this work, and here's a framework to do that work. So let's put the two together and go do it. So the next question is, why entrepreneurs? And I think that is, again, another really important question. And there's something about taking the entrepreneurial step. I love the spiral dynamics framework. Chris Beck, Don Cowan came up with the 7 levels of consciousness in the 1980s. It's a very useful framework. There's more information on that topic on my website, on my blog. If you type in 7 levels of living, Jamin Fraser, you'll find more information about that. But it's basically, these levels go from survival to tribe to rebellion to the system to entrepreneur, contribution and growth. So I think, 35 to 40, often if you've worked through those stages, you've been in the system as an adult, working for the man, being responsible, serving someone else's vision, making someone else rich, and that season is coming to the end of its life. Now it's feeling like it's killing you because you've got this entrepreneurial dream. You have a desire to go be awesome in the world and solve some problems and back yourself. But it's this massive personal development step. Do I have what it takes? Am I good enough? Do I have real value in the real world? Could I actually stick it to the man, quit my job, launch out into the entrepreneurial space? And so I think 35 to 40-year-olds are having that conversation, and there's a lot at stake because each of us have beautiful ideas inside of us. We have a unique contribution to make, and it is insecurity that locks people in the system because the system lies to us and says, hey, listen, by the way, you're weaker than you think, so don't ever imagine you could actually exit this and do it on your own, or you could survive without this paycheck or this superannuation or this retirement fund. What are you thinking? Like, this is as good as it gets. Just play your part, be responsible, settle down. Your job's not that bad, and you're retiring soon anyway, so just suck it up. So, that feeds this insecurity. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes. And so then people die with the music inside them. So if you don't work out how to step into the entrepreneurial space at 35 to 40, maybe you never work it out, and then you never bring your gift to the world, and that's bad for everybody. So I think, again, it's really important for people who are 35 to 40, they are aware that there's something unique that they've got, and they're already taken that step or they're ready to take that step. Then insecurity becomes massively important because you can kind of work your job, especially if you're good at what you do. You can kind of get away without really dealing with insecurity a lot of the time in the system because it doesn't require you to be at your best. You were at your best when you started out, but now you're doing it with your eyes closed. But to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be at your best because that's all you again. No one else is going to make it happen for you. So that's why it becomes very essential to deal with insecurity, because that could be the handbrake issue that sabotages your success and holds you back from doing great work in the world. So I want to really unpack these 7 practices for you, 7 essential practices. I don't own these practices. I think they represent wisdom that is universal and has been around for since ancient times. And I think it represents stuff that works and is transformational. It's very practical and very spiritual, and very useful. I think it's the right framework to get this job done. I'm convinced it is possible to overcome insecurity on the level of growth that you are at, so that you can become unhindered. Now, being unhindered, obviously, that's going to cause you to move forward, and you'll move forward into uncertainty, which will raise new levels of insecurity. That's okay, because you'll solve that insecurity problem just the same way you solved it currently, using the same framework. So let's have a look at these 7. By the way, at the end of this, I'll send you to my website to have a look at the full framework and encourage you to take the online assessment test to measure yourself against these 7. I think that's really useful feedback to yourself to go, yeah, I think I'm doing okay. How can I know for sure? So make use of that assessment as a way of giving yourself some reflection and feedback and asking some important questions to go, here are the 7. Here is how people throughout time have overcome insecurity. It's not magic. It's not complicated. It's simple and hard. How are you doing with these 7? So be sure to check that out. So here's the 7 essential steps, practices to being unhindered. The first is to step into the light. Now that means actually stop running. It means an honest assessment of where you are now, a willingness to own the fact that you are insecure. And I get that's tough. People are insecure about being insecure, but Yoda says, named must your fear be, before banish it you can. So until you are clear about what you're actually fighting, well, then the fight can't begin. Typically people are trying to solve the pain problems in their life where they show up. They manifest on the level of their finances, their relationships, their health, their job. And because that's where they manifest, that's where the attention goes to fighting them. But the reason those problems are there is not on that level. They are created at a deeper level. They're created on the level of story and beliefs and fear, and specifically the fear of not being good enough. So stepping into the light is the first step to actually own the fact that when you're really honest, you have never really worked out whether you are good enough. And that thought terrifies you. Stepping into the light is ending your running away from this fear and a willingness to put your hand up and face it. Tough, difficult, confronting, but essential. You can't fight that which you're not owning. So it requires you to own the state of play, be very clear around how this is an issue for you and how it's showing up in your world. Stepping into the light. And most people are not. Most people are pretending, hiding, running. Nathaniel Brand in The Psychology of Self-Esteem says that when life happens, you can either face up to it or run away. Every time you run away, you take shame, guilt, and anxiety, because it is possible to run away. You can pretend, mask, avoid, hide, procrastinate, obfuscate. It is possible, but you don't get away scot-free. You take shame, guilt, and anxiety, and you actually, in the process, teach yourself that you don't have what it takes to deal with life, and you need to keep running. You're not qualified to be an adult. You need to keep hiding and keep running. And so in that whole process, you end up forming this belief that you are not enough and you don't have what it takes, which then ends up giving you a horrible self-esteem. Alternatively, you can face up to life. You don't know how you're going to do it. It's hard, it's challenging. You don't know how you're going to survive, but you make a decision to stop running. And you stand, you own, you confront, you deal with, you take responsibility, you accept. And while it's hard, you actually get through it and you don't die. And it strengthens you, because instead of taking shame, guilt, and anxiety, you take confidence, strength, and peace, and you sleep well at night. And in the process, you teach yourself you do have what it takes. You can face life. You are stronger than you think, which ultimately ends up building this empowering belief inside you that says, I'm enough, actually. I have enough. I am enough. I'm going to be okay. Healthy self-esteem. So stepping into the light is the essential first practice. Secondly, taking 100% responsibility for your life, for your results, for your relationships. Tough, confronting, challenging. I get pushback on this all the time. A recent pushback, and it was from one of the workshops actually. One of the ladies was saying for the longest time she's resisted this idea because she's like, I don't want to be responsible for the stuff that's happened to me. I don't want to be responsible for being abused. I don't want to be responsible for being bullied. I don't want to be responsible as though that were my fault, as though I deserved that or I created that. That's horrible. I don't want responsibility for that. And so the distinction was separating self-blame from taking responsibility and realizing that, sure, you don't choose a bunch of stuff that happens to you, but you always get to choose your response to life. And owning your response to life means you realize that life's not about what happens to you, it's about the meaning that you place on the things that happen to you. So ultimately, you are responsible for your life. You are responsible for training others how to treat you by what you allow and deny. Now, this is super important in terms of overcoming insecurity, because when people step into the light, go, righto, there's an insecurity problem. The next step is, well, how did I get here? So why am I insecure? And, for me, I remember when I first uncovered insecurity in my own life, off the back of making a courageous decision to write my first book and tell a bunch of people about it and actually commit to doing that. And I wrote the first chapter and it was so beautiful and amazing. I was so pepped up and excited. And then literally the moment I shut the laptop, all that excitement turned to fear and dread and anxiety. And I was like, holy shit, what have I done? I've actually spoken it out now. I've committed to this process. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't? What if no one cares? What if I fail? And I was like, this incredible mountain of insecurity was exposed. I didn't even know it was there until I put myself in this space. And so that began a journey for me to explore where this came from, because I realized if I didn't work out how to solve this insecurity problem, it was a monster. It had the power to consume my hopes and dreams and cause me to show up at my worst where it mattered most and to give up on the things that were most important to me. Like it was so strong and so powerful. And I thought, I reckon this is what happens to people. If they don't solve the insecurity problem, it ultimately destroys them. It leads them to madness. It literally turns them insane. So I thought I have to solve this. And so I went back and thought, righto, why am I insecure? Well, my best guess is the painful moments in my life, the things that have hurt me and affected me and embarrassed me and disappointed me, when I've been rejected, when I've been bullied, when I've been belittled, when people have not understood me. It's all their fault. I thought about a particular moment with a school teacher and with a bully, and then some stuff with my parents and some friends, and I was thinking that's their fault. That's why I'm insecure. But the key piece in this puzzle was understanding the nature of meaning and story, and realizing that as human beings, we are storytellers. We go into the world and we tell stories to make sense of our experience. And so, every event that happens, we are asking and answering two questions. Why did this happen to me? And what does it mean? Why did this happen and what does it mean about me? And with our negativity bias, psychology teaches us that we are more inclined to tell negative stories than positive ones and focus on negative things than positive things. It's part of our protection mechanism dating back to ancient times. So typically we answer those questions negatively. We think negative things that happen to us are a direct reflection of negative things about us. So it's not that the insecurity didn't come from the people that said things about me. It's when they said those, I decided that they were right. I agreed with them. I said, that is true. That is exactly right. So it was my own opinion of the situation that created the insecurity, which is actually wonderfully empowering to understand, because it means I'm not a victim. It means I'm not just a story. I'm not an actor in this story. I am the storyteller. I'm the one who created insecurity. I'm the one who told myself I wasn't enough. That's me, all me. And so I'm the only one who can change it. So responsibility, it's so crucial to realize no one is coming to save you in this area. Stop waiting for someone else to pump your tires up or tell you're awesome or give you love or appreciate you or validate you. Because if you don't believe you're enough, even when they do, you'll doubt it. You won't receive it. You'll question it. It'll be so fleeting. It all comes back to your own opinion of yourself. 100% responsibility. Third aspect of the essential steps, and these are steps that people have used throughout time to deal with this problem, is to stack the pain. Typically, people run away from pain. They don't like pain. They mask it. They medicate it. They avoid it. It doesn't feel nice to feel pain, so you want to get out of pain. But pain is a gift. Pain is designed to protect you from further pain. That's its intention. When you put your hand on the fire, it's supposed to hurt because that pain is saying, hey, take your hand off the fire. So it turns out feeling shit about yourself is actually supposed to feel shit. That's kind of the point. You weren't designed to feel like this. That pain is saying, hey, listen, what if we actually change this? That would be beautiful. Could we face this? Could we deal with this? Could we make a plan to get out of this long term for good rather than just masking, medicating, avoiding? That would be wonderful. So stacking the pain is a really useful way. In fact, it's an essential way for all change work. Until the pain of staying where you are exceeds the pain of change, you won't change. If things are like, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's a bit annoying, but I'm okay. Well, why would you change? You only change when you're in such a state of pain. You're like, I cannot go another day living with this limitation inside me. I cannot cope with this constant doubt and fear and insecurity ruining me, leading to madness. I will not go another day without facing this, dealing with this. So stack the pain, use pain as an advantage. Observe how this pain is actually showing up in your family, in your marriage, in your relationships, in your work, in your finances, in your health, in your body, in your mind, in your emotions. Like observe the cost of driving the car with the handbrake on. Look how it's ruining you. Look at how this insecurity is causing grief and ruining your life. Observe that. Feel that pain. Feel it as intensely as you possibly can because every cell in your body is hardwired to move away from pain. So typically people link pain to change, but the point is if you can link pain to where you are, then you have a beautiful motivator to get out of where you are and to move forward and to address some stuff. So pain is really useful. Stacking the pain is an essential part of the change process. And until you were in a state of pain around this, you won't change. So don't worry about the pain. Don't fear the pain. Overcoming insecurity is a journey into pain. That's essential. That's going to be okay. You'll be all right. Feel the pain and feel it even more and more strongly. Stir it up, build it up. Face that pain. Let it serve you. It's your most honest and loving voice. Number 4 is to have a compelling life vision. So Anthony Robbins talks about the pressure cooker strategy of change, which is very ineffective, he explains, and it's just using pain. So weight loss is a great example. People are motivated to lose weight when the pain of how they are looking gets too much to bear, and that drives massive action. So they chuck out Tim Tams, clean out the fridge, they buy a gym membership, they get an accountability partner, they buy running shoes, they just go hard to make massive change because they're in massive pain. That's beautiful. It works great. And 6-10 weeks down the track, they've made change. People are noticing. They're feeling better about themselves. They've got more life and energy. They're getting compliments. It feels good. But because they feel good, the pain is dying down. And with the pain dying down, all the motivation for change is moving away as well. So then 6 months later, they're back to where they were, if not worse, and the whole cycle starts again. So not only do you need to use pain, but also pleasure. It's important to have a moving away from strategy, but also a moving towards strategy. Being very, very clear about what you want to have happen, about what it is that you desire, about what the dream is for your life, about what would excite you, and having a compelling life vision. Now, this is hard, right? As all these things are. I think not many people, I would say less than 5% of the world's population have a compelling life vision that is real to them and that they've given themselves permission to pursue. Most people don't know what they want, pretending not to know what they want, can't see what they want, have given up on what they want, are settling and surviving, just ending up serving someone else's vision. That's not going to be enough. If you're serving someone else's vision, there's no real need to deal with insecurity. It'd be nice, yeah, it'd be cool, I'd like to, but you won't because it'll get too hard. The only thing powerful enough to keep you moving forward when it gets really hard is this driver around, I have to. If I die with the music inside me, that is going to be so painful and so terrible. I must find a way to experience the life that I've dreamt for myself since I was a kid. So really exploring this what do I want question, which is the most dangerous and powerful question we can ever be asked as a human being. It's dangerous because it exposes us to conflict and rejection and potential failure and disappointment. But it's so powerful because to desire is human. It is deeply part of the human experience. We all have some sense of what success and happiness is to us, but most people just think it's too hard or too late or too costly, and so they've given up on it. You're going to need this, though, if you're going to change. So the essential practice is to tap back into desire. Give yourself permission to dream again and to build it up and to stir it up and to focus on that. I ask myself this question, 2 or 3 times a week, if not more. What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And what am I prepared to do about it? Okay, great. I've had people question my strategy around the insecurity project. They think, well, really, is that going to work? People are insecure about being insecure. Is that a viable business model? Who's going to pay for that? I've had coaches and business experts tell me they don't believe it. They can't see it. Oh, sorry about that. We're back. Interesting to see whether you gave up on the process there or whether you hung in through that gap in audio. How bad do you want this? How important is it to you to find a way to overcome insecurity? So all I was just saying about other people doubting me and not believing in my plan, and sometimes that really affected me. But every time it's like, hang on, Jamin, what do you want? Who cares if others don't want it for you? Who cares if they don't see it? What do you want and what are you prepared to do about it? And that's been the thing over the years that has caused me to face up to my stuff, rewrite my story, push into pain, do more, be more, have more, just go beyond what is safe and known and comfortable just because of this compelling vision. So it is an essential part of the change process. And I don't watch people overcome insecurity without this. If you miss this piece, I think it's game over pretty early on in the process. Number 5 is to get help from someone who doesn't care about you, which sounds really weird and even a bit unfair. But typically when people start dealing with insecurity and they think about enlisting help from other people, because you kind of realize, my goodness, this is so big to me. I am going to need help from someone outside me to do this. People typically look for friends and family to help them think through this. But, this is why conversations with friends and family about change never lead to change, because there's always this level of wanting from the people who care about you. And so there should be, people who love you want you to be happy, want you to be okay, don't want you to be insecure, want you to be happy and relaxed and successful and healthy. And so they speak to you out of that wanting and they give you advice and they tell you what they think you should do, which is well-intentioned but really cruel because it's a judgment and it positions them as the expert and you as the child. And no matter what you're doing on the outside, internally when someone gives you advice and tells you what they think you should do, inside you go, don't tell me what to do. You're not my mum. Like we resent it. And, at best it produces a short-term change, but it never brings about lasting change. So whenever I get to coach someone, my number one job, my first job is to convince them that I don't care. I say, look, I know I look like a guy who cares. I know I probably sound like a guy who cares, but you just can't confuse me for someone who gives a shit. You can't. Like, I won't lose any sleep over you. You'll tell me sad stories and I won't cry. I'll forget all about you when we're done here. But I'm not another person who wants you to do something you don't want to do. I don't care. I'm not the one with the problem. It's not my life. And before they cry and run away, I say, well, look, tell me what you want, though, and I'll give you every single thing I've got inside me to get that. But you have to want it, because me wanting it for you is entirely useless. It's your life here, and until you take responsibility for your own life, someone else trying to fix you, that's a false economy. That's not going to get you anywhere. So I think the usefulness of enlisting someone outside of you with no vested interest in your result is that it creates this judgment-free space. Whether you should be here or shouldn't be here, here is where you are. Whether you should be insecure or shouldn't be insecure, I don't care, I don't know, but you are, so let's deal with that. It positions you in this powerful place of being the responsible adult. And you created this mess, so you're the only one who can clean it up. Having someone who doesn't care about you also provides this objectivity. Someone who has no vested interest in your story can see outside your story and help you see the gaps and the holes and the bits you're blinkered and you've been missing, which is super important when it comes to insecurity. Because this fear, it just becomes so real and so powerful. But someone who's outside your story can go, well, it doesn't even make sense. It couldn't be true. They can help you be objective about your experience. So I think this is essential. I honestly do. I think, counselors, psychologists, friends, family, they all have their place. But I think coach is the space for change. When it's done right, when it's done well, I think that coaching space provides this clean, crisp conversation with massive leverage for change because it positions you as a responsible adult and the coach as the skillful guide and realizing that you're the one doing all the hard work. If you get help from someone who cares, they're the one doing the hard work. They're trying to fix you. They're trying to pump your tires up. They're trying to blow wind up your skirt. They're trying to believe in you and encourage you and make you feel great and carry you. And then the moment they stop, nothing's changed. So for you to actually change, you have to do the work. And having a coach hold you in that space is going to do that. I love thinking about this in terms of a metaphor of a cast on your arm. If you've ever broken a bone in your arm, if it heals properly, then to x-ray that broken part 12 months later, it's actually stronger where it was broken than before it was broken. So how does that happen? How does that bone get healed? Is it the surgeon? Is it the doctor? Is it the cast? Is it God? Is it you? Clearly it's your own body. Every cell in your body is optimized for health, knows how to get the job done. But interestingly, if your arm is not set properly and those bones aren't touching, well, the healing can't take place. So I think the cast is just like the coaching conversation. When I get to coach people, it's about holding them still in these 7 practices so that they don't run away when it gets hard or scary or it stops making sense or they're encountering their biggest fears. It's like just stay still, just hold here, because if I can hold you still, then you will do the work that only you can do. You will heal yourself. We have the capacity not just to heal our body, but our emotions and our mind and our psychology and our relationships and our story. That's the power of being a human being. And that all is facilitated when you get help from someone who doesn't care. Number 6 is to be the hero. There comes a point where all the talking is done and you've actually got to go do the work. I'll sum up this stage by saying at some point, you have to actually face the question, the big, scary question. And here it is. Am I a good person or am I not? See, that's the question, but that question for most people has never been answered. They're like, I don't know the answer to that question. I hope I'm good, but what if I'm bad? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bunch of protection mechanisms around my life so that I never actually have to ask that question. I'm going to have a strategy to feel good about myself by keeping everybody happy. So I'm going to be a people pleaser. I'm never actually going to put myself out there so I never get exposed. I'm never going to show up at my best so I can't get found out. So they create a whole bunch of stuff so that they are never faced with this real raw question. Am I a good person or am I a bad person? Am I enough or am I not? Because it's a scary question, right? Because what happens if I'm not enough? That would be horrible. So I don't even want to answer the question. But at some point, if you're going to overcome insecurity, that's the question. It's always been the question. Now it's time to answer it. I love the hero's journey metaphor from Joseph Campbell, and I think it sums up this process really well, because at some point the hero's got to go do what the hero does, and the wisdom character, Gandalf, the coach, the mentor, the father, the person who's resourced them is no longer there. Their friends have dropped off. They're just by themselves, and they got to go fight the dragon. And it's high stakes because you don't know what's going to happen. And whenever we see this in real life, it takes our breath away. That's what captivates us. And we see it in movies, in literature, in art, in music. We love it. It captivates us. So this is about being the hero of your own story and going to fight the dragon. Going to go face this fear once and for all. Going to go all the way back to where this story was created and to discover it, to face this. Now, it's interesting, right? Because this seems like such a terrible thing, a scary thing, a horrible thing. But from the coach's perspective, who's outside of his story, he can see this thing a bit more objectively. So it looks like there's this monster or this dragon in the bottom of the garden who's been taunting you your whole life. And now here you are about to step into that cave and go fight the dragon, and surely you're going to die. But the coach can kind of see around the corner of this cave and realise that it's just this shadow on the wall that looks like a dragon. In fact, it's just a couple of mice playing silly buggers with a candle and a torch and some tin cans, and it's never been a dragon. Of course you've been enough. Of course you're inherently good. You just told yourself a story as a child to try and make sense of your reality, and you've never revisited that script or that agreement. So, but no one can tell you that. Like, if that's all, it was just someone say, hey, listen, you're enough. Just believe you're enough. Oh, fantastic. That's all I need. We'd all be fine. But no one can do this for you. You have to find it out for yourself. That's the work of being the hero. And I think specifically the hero's work is about the origin of the story. It's realizing that everything's created twice, as Stephen Covey teaches. It's to go back and explore, where did this story start? When was the first time that I decided, that I made this agreement that I was no good? Go back and explore the agreement. Go back and find the beginning of this thing. And I think it's so important to go back to the origin, because otherwise you're just trying to build the house on a faulty foundation. If you're trying to change this thing but without going back, as a lot of people are terrified of going back. I talk to coaches, therapists, counsellors all the time who are afraid. They're just like, no, we don't go back. We just help them be positive now, today, and be focused on what they want, because there's a whole bunch of pain and trauma and mess back in their past. It's not important to unpack. Like, that's rubbish. That's a terrible thing. That's not wisdom. That's not going to solve the problem. That's going to put a band-aid on the problem. And what's so scary about it anyway? It's just going back and observing a decision a child made with limited awareness, limited maturity, limited understanding about a painful moment, and they internalized it and decided it was about them. It was never about them. It was just a story they told themselves. Because they've never revisited it, it's become this monster, this massive fear. But they're going to be okay, right? Because it's not even real. So what can be so terrifying about going back? Because it's not about what's happened to us anyway. It's about the meaning we place in the things that happened to us. So we're not victims. We're responsible. We're the storyteller, not an actor. So it's okay. You're going to be all right. Do the work. Be the hero. It's essential. And finally is to rewrite the story. So having deconstructed the old story, now that all that is left to do is to rewrite a new one, a compelling one. And all we have is story, so you could write whatever story you like. And surely you could find a better one than the first one, because the first one is often the negative, disempowering one written by a child. So to go back as an adult, clear about what you want, surely you can write a better script for yourself to live out of. Surely you can write a compelling, enlarging, empowering narrative about you being enough, with nothing to prove and nothing to defend, giving yourself permission to be at your best where it matters most, and to align yourself to that story. So having intentionally decided what you're going to agree on about who you are and what you're worth and where you're going, then it's about aligning yourself to that story every day. So typically people orient their life by like this strategy state story. So they get up in the morning and they just jump into what they need to do. But they do all they need to do based on whatever state they find themselves in. If it's a good day, it's a good day. It's a bad day, it's a bad day. There's nothing they can really do about it. And underneath all of that, or overarching all that, is this meta-narrative, this negative, disempowering story that says they're no good, which limits everything anyway. So even on their best day, they're only achieving 5% of what they're totally capable of, because they're massively limited by this story and this script. Successful people, however, start the other way around. They go story, state, strategy. So firstly, they're very clear about, having already deconstructed their old story, they're very clear about the kind of story they want for their life. And they deliberately, intentionally, on purpose, write that story. And then the first thing they do in the morning is they align themselves to that new story. Who am I again? What am I doing here? How's life going for me? That's right. And they speak that to themselves, and they see that about themselves, and they own it about themselves. Then they go prime their state. practicing life-giving rituals and anchors, and then they go do epic shit. Story state strategy. That's wisdom, that's life, that's the way that this actually works. And then that reinforces this whole thing, and it becomes the new self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes the stuff that actually works, changes you, transforms you. Everything's created twice anyway, so your current results now are just the byproduct of the script you have been living out of. So if you go write a new script, go do the new first creation work, then you cannot not experience new second creation results in the real world. So that's the 7 practices, and as I said, it's a cycle, right? Because you'll do those well, that'll cause you to be unhindered, which is beautiful. But being unhindered means you'll step forward, you'll grow, you'll move into the uncertainty, and then eventually you'll find a new limit, a new place where you're out of your depth, out of your comfort zone again, and insecurity rises its head. And you worked out that you were enough for that last level, but are you enough for this next level? And so the same practices will again serve you to be unhindered on that next level of growth. So I love having conversations about this stuff. This is what I was born to do. And I don't know what's happening inside as we're having this conversation and unpacking these things. But there's some work to do here. I think this stuff is simple and hard. People often, feel like this whole space is so complicated and unique and so messy. It's just not true. And it's just part of the subconscious protection mechanism to not actually have to deal with it. There's a way forward. It's tried and tested. You are actually able to overcome insecurity so that you can be at your best. And the world is waiting for you, especially as entrepreneurs. You have great work to do. So if in any way I can serve you to do that great work by helping you be unhindered, that would be a beautiful experience for both of us. So as I mentioned before, you can get the full model for these 7 practices on my website. And then that leads you to the online assessment tool, which helps you test yourself against these things to check in. How am I doing with these 7? I think I'm doing okay, but this will give you an accurate assessment so that you can see where the work needs to be done and where the work is falling down, so that you stay in this framework. You keep the cast on until it works. So I hope that's been useful. Let me know, send me a message, reach out. You can find me on all the socials. I'm the only Jamin Fraser in the world as I'm aware of. So if you can work out how to spell it, not that hard to find, send me a message. And looking forward to seeing you show up unhindered.